This is the Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's family.
All right, well, the NFL coaching carousel continues to turn, and the Arizona Cardinals, one of two teams still on it. Let's get a perspective here. What's going on with the Cardinals? What should they do? The Venerable, Johnny Venerable, zooms in here from PHNX. First conversation we've had about the Cardinals. Look forward to talking Cardinal football with you for a while, but how did you receive the news today? Sean Payton is going to the Broncos.
Yeah, it's disappointing. If you were a Cardinal fan, if you are a Cardinal fan, you were kind of courted into the idea that Sean Payton could land here. I mean, we had the phenomenal 7+ hour visit with Sean last Thursday, Michael Bidwell and company at the Tempe facility. You saw that video that came out of both Sean and Michael leaving in the same car. At that point, Mark, it seemed like Denver was out of the running, and the Cardinals had not asked for any additional interview requests at that point. So if you're trying to connect the dots, I mean, on our podcast into Saturday, we expected some kind of an announcement. And when it didn't come, and the Cardinals then turned around and they submitted not one, not two, but 3 interview requests for first-time interviews this week, and then you saw the Broncos do nothing of the similar, you knew that it was basically dead and buried, that somehow either the Broncos used the Cardinals as leverage, Michael Bidwell, which he's been known to do, balked at the price. I don't think this has anything to do with draft capital and compensation. The Cardinals could have matched that package. I think this has more to do with, did Michael Bidwell want to pay Sean Payton $15 to $20 million? And is Sean Payton really interested in coaching here? I would think so. He coached in the NFC for his entirety of his career. And I think the AFC, in particular the AFC West, is a gauntlet. But money talks at the end of the day, and it's disappointing.
So was that an orange tie then? Was that a message on Sunday for Fox where Sean Payton was going, you think?
I think so. An orangish red to kind of maybe leverage the Cardinals out for another 48 hours. But again, I mean, Sean was connected to them, but then we kind of had it sourced on our show from a couple different people, including Benjamin Albright, that the first engagement with the Broncos and Sean Payton did not go well. And there was a fear of clashing with ownership and Sean based on what he wanted. And if you remember, the Denver Broncos have been bought out by these Walmart people, so there's a bunch of different voices in the room, whereas Sean and Michael Bidwell have been acquaintances. They've known each other for some time. So you figure that one-to-one alignment better serve Sean. But where things got muddled up, I mean, we're going to find out over the course of the next couple of weeks, but it is unfortunate because you allowed Cardinal fans to have renewed hope when I think a lot of them maybe had moved on. And now you're back to kind of square one with these new coaches.
Yeah, and we had our photographer Juan Magana was over there last Friday and got him walking to the car. He literally walked up and they walked out. It was like cue him.
Yeah.
And we told Juan it's never that easy. Some guys go stake him out for the entire day. Yeah. But you think about, I mean, the times when Peyton Manning was with Ken Whisenhunt. He went to Denver. Why can't the Cardinals close the deal here, in your opinion?
Well, that one was less telegraphed. The Cardinals were not last in line, but it's ownership. It has to be ownership. And I think Michael Bidwell is a far better owner than his late father, Bill Bidwell. And that's not a knock on Bill the person. He wasn't a good football owner dating back to the team's time in St. Louis. Michael has done a lot of good, right? He's upgraded the facilities. They've got a private jet. They're one of 2 teams that have a private jet. They host Super Bowls. I think he wants to win. I'm not sure if he knows how to win. But I think that if you're looking for, I don't know, glimmers of hope with this franchise, they've eaten the contracts of both Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury. They're not coming back to the franchise. They have hired external people to run their scouting department, in particular their general manager for the first time since 1994 in Monty Ossenfort. So I think with that coming as a precursor to this Peyton kind of escapade, you thought that there'd be some renewed hope that maybe this would fall in line with what the Cardinals want to do. And that's not to say they could go out and hire somebody in the coming days that is fantastic. But there was only one kind of tone changer, culture changer, and that was Sean Payton, assuming you couldn't get a Jim Harbaugh, which the Cardinals never seriously entertained. But I feel like at the end of the day, you think about what they were paying Cliff Kingsbury, which was around $7.5 million, easily the lowest paid coach in the NFC West. I mean, you want to coach in the NFC West, you either have to land a big-time head coach or pay a premium for one, right? You got to get lucky in some aspects. You're going against Kyle Shanahan, Pete Carroll, and Sean McVay, maybe 3 coaches that are going to the Hall of Fame. So if you feel like you're going to nickel and dime coaches to be competitive, that's just not the case. That's why I thought Peyton and the Cardinals just fit so well. But at the end of the day, I do really believe, Mark, that it was a dollars and cents kind of issue. Plus, Sean really needed to be convinced that the Cardinals were right for him. And something tells me when you're with the Bidwell family, they want you to be wooed by them and not vice versa, if that makes sense. They want to feel wanted too, and I'm not sure that's how the exchange went off.
Interesting. And you wonder how much of this has to do picking Russell Wilson over Kyler. How much do you think that factors in as well? Not only the knee injury, but just kind of the mysterious nature of the relationship between Cliff and Kyler and how coachable Kyler is.
Yeah, I think it's some of it, but like Sean Payton could go and sign Jameis Winston in March to be the Cardinals quarterback this year and be competitive, right? We saw him do that, win 9 and 10 games each of the last couple of years he was in New Orleans. I don't put as much stock into that as some other people do. Like, Russell is what he is. Like, Russell Wilson could potentially be washed, and they could be in trouble here in the next 18 to 24 months. Like, there's a possibility that Kyler Murray could come back. He could have taken to Sean Payton in the playbook and been fine by November. And then you're rocking and rolling. And you could have had a Jameis or a Taysom Hill, like, back in a trade that could have helped you steady the waters for September and October. Like, those were all within the realm of possibility. I don't think the Cardinals' job, a lot of people are trying to make this out to be a Kyler issue, at least for somebody like Sean, who would have been guaranteed 6, 7, 8 years, in my opinion. Like, it had very little to do with Kyler. I mean, conceivably, if Sean didn't want Kyler after 2 years, they would get rid of Kyler Murray and they would keep Sean Payton. So is it better to have Russell Wilson at the start of next year? I guess, but you're in the dreaded AFC West. You're not competing against what is now Montana and Walsh and Reed and Mahomes, and you've got Justin Herbert, and Tom Brady could go to the Raiders, right? So I felt like that was maybe like 10%. But again, at the end of the day, it's how much are you going to pay me? How much are you going to pay my assistants? There's a report now, Mark, that Vic Fangio is reconsidering his offer from Miami and could potentially go to the Broncos. Why is that? Because they would pay him the most money. Michael Bidwell was never going to do that.
Wow. Vic Fangio back to the Broncos. I did think it was interesting. I thought Dan Quinn might be a good fit because of his familiarity with Kyle Shanahan and Pete Carroll. He went back to the Cowboys. Brian Flores, it sounds like your boy Bo Brock is going to go try to flag him down at the Senior Bowl and see what he has to say. Who as you kind of look at what's out there, and all these names are coming up of coordinators who we probably should have heard of, but many of us haven't. What direction do you think the Cardinals go?
Well, if you would have asked me 4 or 5 days ago, I would have said it's a lock for Flores or Payton to be the head coach. It made too much sense. We have been through 3 weeks of the vetting process. Flores has connections to Austin Ford. He's been a head coach before. He's had success. No nonsense. Could really come in and clean up the mess for the Cardinals in a bunch of different ways. But I have concerns now that they are interviewing 3 additional candidates this week. That's not to say Flores is off the table, but Minnesota, it sounds like, wants them for their defensive coordinator role. And they've got their GM trying to court him, it looks like, in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. And Brian's probably like, yeah, I need to pick a job, guys. Stop interviewing candidates. Let me know. And the Cardinals are like, we're going to bring in Brian Callahan and Mike Kafka, people who we have an opportunity to interview, but we've waited until the first week of February to do so. So if I had to guess right now, it's going to be one of these 3 folks that they bring in this week. Lou Anarumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator, Brian Callahan, the Bengals OC, or Mike Kafka, the Giants OC, I think Northwestern star quarterback. So, I mean, like, is any of those hirings going to set the world on fire for the Cardinal fan base? Probably not. And I'm not, throwing shade at these guys. They could do a phenomenal job. But no one was going to match the excitement you could get from Sean Payton. And I think with Flores in particular, Mark, like, he's been a head coach before for a franchise that was dysfunctional, that didn't have a quarterback, that played in a loaded AFC East. Like, you could get people fired up about Brian Flores. Why they haven't consummated that yet, I don't know.
Well, and I think about next year, and I just wonder how much is that going to be a lost year if Kyler can't play. I would almost think don't let him play for the entire year, try to get back-to-back years of top 5 draft picks and try to restyle, which isn't a bad strategy. How are you down for that? That's going to kind of hurt business for both of us.
Oh, sure it will. And it's hard for the fan base that, by the way, and we were out of games this year, the fan base was lacking. Let's just say that. Rightfully so. Like, I'm not going to tell people not to sell their tickets. I want to see people go into State Farm Stadium. But, like, opposing fans had a presence at State Farm Stadium, and that's what happens when you win 1 home game in 16 months. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to put on a product that's worth for people to go and watch. And so I don't ever think that they're going to talk about punting on the season. What they need to do is sell the fan base on laying a foundation. Like, we're going to try to be as competitive as we can. We don't know how many wins that's going to result, but you're going to see a vision. Too many times with Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim and Vance Joseph, there was a disconnect between April and the regular season, right? There was a disconnect between draft picks, who was going to play, and then it was something else entirely come the fall. Like with Monty Ossenford and whomever they hire, whether it's Callahan or Kafka, everybody needs to be on the same page. Like, we're taking Will Anderson, 3rd overall. He's playing 90% of the snaps this weekend or this year on Sundays. That's reason enough to come out. And I think fans will be more patient if there's a plan in place like that. It's kind of like how Cincinnati was built, right? You know, they've laid the foundation. They got Burrow. They got Chase. They've had some top picks. They're mostly built through the draft. And now you see back-to-back AFC Championship game appearances. The Cardinals have been so predicated on quick fixes right after Bruce Arians left, where it's a retool, not a rebuild, and it blows up in their face with Steve Wilkes. And then this past year, trying to go all in with trades and acquisitions, Hollywood Brown, Zach Ertz. They just need to build something that's sustainable over time to compete every year. And to do that, you got to rip it out from the studs and start from the ground up.
Would you be comfortable if Vance Joseph got the job?
No, I would not. And that's not a shot at Vance Joseph. I've made my issues with that heard on Twitter. Analytic-based, stats-based. I've had Buda Baker kind of clap back at me. They love Vance Joseph. I get that. You can't have the 29th, 30th ranked defense and then be gifted the head coaching job. You just can't. And I've used this analogy before, Mark. Like, just because he was a better coach and had a better head coaching presence than Cliff Kingsbury last year on the roster and really saved them from embarrassment on things like Hard Knocks doesn't mean he should get the job. Like, if Cliff Kingsbury is a failing grade at 45% and Vance Joseph is 58%, that doesn't mean he's qualified to coach the team. And so I think at the end of the day, that was a hey, thanks for your service. We're going to give you the DC interview. They did that on January 18th. It's been too long. They haven't re-interviewed him. I think if that would have happened, it would send just a horrific message to the fan base, because it would look like the cheap alternative. Yes, you're eating the contracts of Cliff and Keim, so we got to keep some people in-house. Why I don't think that's happening definitively. Why would Monty Ossenford come here in his opportunity to become a GM and hitch his wagon to Vance Joseph? Because he hired an external assistant GM in Dave Sears from Detroit instead of promoting Adrian Wilson and Quentin Harris. To me, that signals they're going external all the way. And again, if you're looking for glimmers of hope, it's with the externals. It's with guys without ties to this franchise.
If the Venerable Johnny Venerable was hired as head coach, what would be your first, second, and third orders of business?
Man, that's a great question. I would say I would go through the roster, and if you're not on a rookie deal and you're an overpaid veteran, I would try to either cut or trade you. And that would include DeAndre Hopkins, and a lot of people would be upset with that. I would try to get the most cheap assets as I could acquire for this loaded draft, try to accumulate top 100 picks to rebuild this thing. You can rebuild an NFL roster in 18 months. Wow. I think this team, they need more Trey McBrides, right? They need players like that. I'm not overpaying guys from years prior. With all due respect to Zach Allen, Byron Murphy, they couldn't stay healthy during their rookie contracts. You're going to pay them big money and they're going to suddenly be healthy all the time. I think that the goal should be younger, more athletic, and cheaper, especially with Kyler Murray's contract that's going to become inflated here in the next couple of years. And then I would use the 3rd overall pick on Will Anderson.
Plans for the Super Bowl. Where can we see you out and about, and where can we find you online?
We're going to be hanging out every day at the PHNX Cardinals podcast live at 4 p.m. Check out myself, Bo Brock's in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. We're going to be hanging out for a couple days on Radio Row. Come out and say hello if you're out in the greater Phoenix area. But we're having a blast. We're 18 months into this thing. We appreciate all the support that you guys have dished out, and we'll continue to cover this team, because with this team, Mark, as you know, there is no off season.
Right. And does PHNX, have you guys put together a Super Bowl party yet? Are you at that point? Or are you trying to sneak into parties? What do we?
We're trying. I think we're doing a little bit of both. We just had some big events with our son's crew. We're gonna have a big draft party that I'll be able to share more information on in the coming months. But I think we got people working the Super Bowl, so I'll work and no play for that one, but check back in with us. I may have a different answer for you in a couple of weeks.
Will you be working? Are you going to be in the stadium, or will you be home with the queso dip? And what's your plan?
I think we're getting a credential, and I'm having to fight Bo over it. And he told me I could have it if I wanted, but I haven't gotten confirmation, so I need to circle back. Typically, I'm home with the queso with the kiddos, but maybe this year it'll be a little different. They'll put me up in the cheap seats. I would love to watch two competent franchises go at it. That's for sure. I've watched, God, Mark, we've watched too much losing at that stadium. It would be nice to just sit back and enjoy a game.
Right. Well, I think here's I'll leave you with this. You and Bo dance off live on social media. Winner gets the credential. Sound good?
That sound that's something. That's something we'll have to mull over. That's for sure.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.